The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
Oh,
Like
all
it's
right,
just
buttery smooth.
yeah, man, it's just smooth.
You
And
know,
go
I
ahead.
know we're recording, but you know what? This is a secret in gospel music, I know, because man, this is another weird story. I have a family connection with gospel music, like commercial gospel music from back in
Really?
the 60s. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but I know that smoking a cig or smoking anything right before you sing, especially for like baritones and basses, puts that extra gravel in there
Yeah.
that everybody loves.
Yeah.
And I just did that. I just smoked.
Okay. I was gonna say, is that what you're doing for the podcast also?
Yeah, that was my technique.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking one for the team, risking, lung cancer and emphysema and all of those things just so you can put out a good podcast. That's dedication.
You
I
can't
appreciate
say
it.
I'm not committed. You
You're
can't
not.
say I'm. Yeah,
And
you
you're
can't say
also you're also wearing what appears to be a fanny pack over your shoulder,
that.
bandolero style. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a commitment as well.
Um. So I think fanny packs are cool.
100%. I'm with you.
B, this is does it look pink? What's the color?
I mean, it looks gray from what I can tell.
Okay. Well,
But
hopefully
that ain't a fanny pack, son. That's like a duffel bag.
this is
That
an
thing is
over the
big.
shoulder. This is
Okay.
how I keep it. And this is like wearing my hat backwards. That's how I envision it. Like obviously it's supposed to go on my back, but
I
crisscross did it.
I feel to make you jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, never mind. I'm not going to say what I feel like because I feel like I talk too much shit on style, and somebody might get the impression that I actually care that much, and I really don't.
Oh no. I don't think people would care that much, but you can just tell you pick up on that. You're a trained observer.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So maybe I do have just a touch of class that I can't get rid of.
Well, I
Maybe
don't
it's
know.
maybe it's just who I am.
I think you're wrong about a lot of that, but I think you do definitely notice.
I
I think
notice
you
it.
notice. You just
You
have the
know,
wrong opinions.
you know, um, I mentioned the other day, I guess last night, that I wanted to give give a shout out to the Scots
Yeah,
for being so faithful.
there are a couple of dedicated Scots that listen.
Yeah, and that may sound like we're talking about Scottish people, but we're talking about two dudes named Scott, and one of them happened like he always kind of had issue with my jeans. Like he would accuse me of wearing skinny jeans, and
Yeah,
I'll be real honest with you. They're slim, but
Yeah.
they're not skinny. And he would always call me out on no skinny jeans, Sarge, or whatever. So some people could criticize my style, but
Well, where did he happen to see you? And is this like when you were just chilling as boys, or was
no,
this?
like in training environments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Man, I got called out on wearing skinny jeans, and in retrospect, they looked like they were painted on.
They're pretty skinny.
Yeah, but they're regular fit jeans. This just happened to be a
Just
time.
not regular sized legs or what?
Right. This happened
Okay.
to be a time where I was creatining it up. I was a creatine bro for a little bit, and I actually am again, but in a different way. But I used to try to get big,
Yeah.
and so squats and deadlifts are real good for getting big, and that's my jam. I still love to do squats and deadlifts. I always go probably a little heavier than I should, but I think I'm still 25. I was working out a lot, my legs a lot and stuff back then. I went to a the other third shift sergeant that was with you, the other male third shift sergeant that was with you.
Yeah.
He put on some really good training. I mean, he's an awesome shooter. He put on some training after shift one time, and I decided to go there. I think I had maybe just gotten on the interdiction team, so I was feeling a little extra cool.
Yep.
I decided to go there in my civilian clothes with my duty belt, like walk out there with it over my shoulder and just sling it on while I'm there to rock and roll. Well, I show up and one of the Scots immediately says, "What's with the skinny jeans?" And everybody looks at me, and the sergeant was like, "Yeah, what's with the skinny jeans?" And they just start roasting me.
Which, if I'm thinking correctly of the right sergeant,
He used to have a really long beard, like a troll beard,
oh,
when he was an narc.
no, maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, because who I was thinking of, the bald-headed guy, I was
Yeah.
thinking that. Oh, okay, yeah, he did have a long beard.
Yeah.
Because that strikes me as really funny that he would criticize anybody for their style. And honestly, I hope he sees this. I hope he hears this, just so he knows that he has no business criticizing anybody or making fun of anybody for their skinny jeans.
When you're in Narcs, because you guys were in, is that cool to talk about?
Yeah.
When you guys were in Narcs together, it seems to me that, I don't know if it's because this is everyone's true personality, or maybe it's just like the narc look. Everybody immediately gets forearm tattoos, grows a beard, and will, I don't know, it seems like more than 50% of them get their ears pierced.
Yeah.
Is that just the narc look?
Man, I'll tell you, I took a pretty hard stance on that initially. When I went back there, I was like, man, I'm not going to get my ears pierced. I'm not going to grow a beard. I'm not going to do any of the narc things, because that's kind of like, that's the perception, is you go undercover, you get a beard, you get your ears pierced, whatever. I didn't notice the tattoo thing. But I think the reality is, like, for one, it's the only time in your career that you could get your ears pierced.
Right.
And at the time, it was the only time in your career you could have a beard.
Yeah.
Now, anybody can have a beard. But what's kind of interesting, and I was at I think it was a surveillance training. It was geared toward undercover work, and the instructor was from New York City or Philadelphia or somewhere back east, and he was like, "What is it with you narcs in Kansas that as soon as you go undercover, you look like a white supremacist?" And I was kind of looking around, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's a bunch of shaved heads, long beards, tatted up looking dirtbags. The only thing I can think is just because that's it works around here. I always used to say I would not buy drugs from somebody that has their ears pierced or is wearing a beard. Like, I would buy drugs from somebody that looks like a cop.
Yeah. What's the demographics of I mean, it's been years since you were on it, but what was the demographics of the narcs? Was there a lot of diversity, or was there any diversity in narcs, like as far as undercover work?
Are you talking about the detective or the target?
The detective.
So no, there was in terms of, like,
it was usually just white dudes.
Yeah, just younger white dudes.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and we may have talked about this before, I would have thought, just because of my look, like, I looked gross, because of my look and because of just the kind of the trends here in Wichita, I would have thought that meth would have been like my go-to. Like, that's what I'd be buying all the time, whatever.
I thought you looked like a meth head when you were a narc.
I felt like I was doing a pretty good job of looking like a meth head. But for whatever reason, I didn't really buy that much meth. I was connected to heroin, which at least in the group that I was working in, it was more northeast side of town, more African Americans involved.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's surprising a little bit. I don't know why.
I mean, honestly, in fact, except for two people in this organization that were white, the rest of them were African American. And one thing that was interesting was, like, the goal obviously is to flip everybody. as you go. And I was interviewing one of the guys, and he was telling me about this spot that was a front. It was a business, but it was a front for gambling and drugs and all kinds of stuff.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And
I think
I had wanted him to go in, to buy some drugs under, as an informant. And he was like, "You can just go. Like, I'll vouch for you. You can go." And I'm like, "Come on, bro. There ain't no way that a guy like me is walking into a place like that and, just buying whatever." Like, he said that he would vouch for me. He said that it would work. It never happened. I never attempted it. But anyway, yeah, it was interesting. There wasn't much diversity in terms of the detectives that were working the cases, but there was a surprising amount of diversity in the targets we were investigating.
When I was doing just interdiction, when I was on the interdiction team, and it was before the need arose for me to start helping out the other shifts, there was just a target I was after, and he had moved into that area, and this guy stuck out there. He looked like kind of a narc, or kind of like the classic user and you think of in South Wichita. But he moved into that neighborhood, and I was driving, wasn't unmarked, but it was a ghost marked car, and I was slow rolling in the neighborhood, and I saw these two girls playing on the sidewalk. They were riding their bikes, and this is a few houses down from his house. And I rolled my window down and I said, "Hey, girls." And this one girl walked over there, and her little sister goes, "Ooh, you're not supposed to be talking to police." And I was like, "Hey, who lives in that house right there?" She was like, "Mm-mm." Just walked away.
How old was she?
Her chin barely came above my window in the Dodge Charger.
Yeah.
And she had a sister smaller than her, and they were unsupervised, whatever.
Yeah.
On the sidewalk.
Ain't no snitch.
Yeah, she's like, "Ooh, you're not supposed to be talking to police."
She was just like, nah, figure it out.
Yeah. She was like, mm-mm. I was like, "All right, peace."
That's funny. So what do you have in your satchel there? Supplies?
Oh, okay. So what I was going to talk, I think I started to bring this up. I always carry.
Okay.
But in the summertime, I like wearing golf shirts or whatever, and my guns are always easily imprintable. They make an easy imprint on my shirts, and I don't like it. Like, I don't know, I'm self-conscious about it. I bet no one notices, but I get real self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
When I see my imprint on my gun. So I like to carry in my fanny pack or my satchel. This is
I feel like if you show it, we might
get
tagged, flagged.
It's what's a Shadow Systems 9mm. It's a version of a Glock 19, except they just do a little, like, supposed to be higher performance parts in it, like more stable parts. There's historically parts that are either fail or are kind of less than desirable on a stock Glock, and a stock Glock is just fine. Like the 500, or it might be 550 Glock that you can get at Academy, or that's pretty much the only big chain store that still sells pistols, I believe, is Academy. But wherever, Bass Pro, those Glocks are A-okay. They're perfect. But there's some stuff like the trigger that's a little bit sloppy or a little bit boingy in a Glock. Like, I don't know if you remember dry firing.
Yeah.
The triggers in a stock Glock is a little bit, like, when it breaks, it's boing, and I just don't like it. In the Shadow Systems, they have a different trigger. It doesn't do that. It's a lot crispier.
Yeah.
Feels like whenever you start to break the wall, or whenever you start to come up, it just, like, it breaks. There's no surprise. I know exactly where my finger's going to be at every single time I pull it. I just feel that break, which helps me. I'm not the best shot. I think I brought a lot of bad habits from before the military into the military.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to get rid of. Like if I'm not thinking about my trigger pull and I just want to just rattle off a bunch of rounds, they're gonna be low and left. A lot of times they're gonna be low and left. Until I start thinking about it and flexing my wrist and I bringing the finger straight back. That's my goal, is to bring my trigger straight back, so I'm not pushing it left or pulling it right, just straight back. And if I flex my wrist and I feel like if I'm just conscious of my trigger pull, I'm pretty straight.
Yeah. Now you said that's equivalent to a 19.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it as heavy?
The
reason I ask is it seems to me that, man, it seems like that would feel awkward, like just hanging on your shoulder like that.
Oh, so let's see. This is just where I go. No, it's not heavy at all. I bring the same bag to school, and I don't carry guns in school, obviously. But
dude, what a disaster would that be if you forgot to take it out?
I tell you what, man. Nothing. I don't tell you anything.
That's sometimes better.
Yeah. Yeah. If you truly do daily carry everywhere you go, and you start going to impermissible or non-permissible grounds, and you behave, because there's something like in my imagination, I could conceive of, if someone daily carries and they need to go to the post office, they're not going to take their gun out to go into the post office. They're just going to go into the post office, even though it's technically a felony or a federal.
And they're going to say, like, nobody's going to know. I'm only going to take 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you have years of doing things like that, possibly, following the rules, but sometimes like a roll and stop, something like that.
Yeah. My favorite is if it says like authorized, whatever, authorized personnel, authorized turns, authorized whatever. I'll just be like, I'll authorize it.
Yes.
And then do it.
There's a pretty famous meme, but I've actually had this exact idea. When you're walking into a lot of businesses, a lot of the gun-free zones, it shows a Beretta 92, like classic Beretta.
Right.
And it has the circle and the line through it. And the meme's like, oh, good thing I'm not carrying a Beretta. So you just go right on in.
Yeah. Now, I think your retired credentials give you at least legal permission to carry in those places. I think it's the same.
They didn't give me any credentials.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
You didn't get it?
Mm-mm. I mean, I have my letter from the state.
Yeah.
That says everything, but the sheriff's office was done officially communicating with me.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true or not. I believe that the retired credentials give you the same authority as if you're active. But I've never been good about carrying off duty.
Yeah.
I tried several times, I tried a bunch of times, and I bought a 43, which is 380, like really small.
Was it the 42?
40, maybe it's 42. Like it's super subcompact, super light. But even that, like I've got a clip on it. Like a little, it's not a belt clip. It's really thin. I don't know. You'd probably know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
To where it doesn't need a holster. Like it just hooks straight to your pants and all.
My backup gun was almost exactly what you're describing.
Yeah. I just haven't found anywhere to carry it that's comfortable. And I understand, like, well, it's going to be real uncomfortable if somebody's getting robbed and I can't stop it. I get that. Yeah. But like physically it's uncomfortable. I don't like the fact that I feel like it imprints. I don't like that I feel like I'm always adjusting it and bringing attention to it.
Yeah.
And so I just rarely ever carried, even back then, and hardly ever now.
There's a couple things you could do. It's not a one answer, but there's a few things to do with this that will help this. If you want, is Look up reviews on good quality holsters, and I would even look up some gun tubers, and I can send you some to check out if you're interested. But some gun tubers do really good reviews on stuff like this. The guy, one of the guys that I listen to the most is a guy named Mike Glover. He's in charge of Fieldcraft Survival, and he has a couple podcasts. He's a really good source of information. But and look up holsters, like a comfortable holster. They make some that are like that. What is it? Kydex in the front, but have like a cushion in the back where it's not hard against your skin. The pros and cons of like where to position. I remember a lot of people used to talk crap on appendix carry, which is basically right in front, right behind your belt buckle, or maybe a little bit to the right or left, depending on your preference. But that's how I like to carry, because like even if I am going to imprint, make a slight imprint, I feel like I know people don't naturally like to look in someone's groin area. Like if they will intentionally avert their eyes from people's groin area.
Yeah.
And it's a very quick, like there's a bunch of gun tube videos on this, but like from fast competitive shooters on how fast they draw from appendix and how fast they draw from the side or even in the back, and it's comparative to open, outside the waist, inside the waist, totally concealed, and the appendix is by far the fastest.
Yeah, I mean, that's a much more natural movement.
Yeah, your hands are always right here. They should be somewhere in front of you. Your hands, that's a good habit to build, is have your hands somewhere in front of you at all times.
Do you think that the average person in Walmart is going to recognize that, like you and I are concerned about the imprint, or like what when I carry behind my back, my shirt does get caught on it quite a bit, and so I don't like that. Yeah. But that aside, do you think that the average person would recognize, hey, he's got a bulge in his waistband, I'll bet he's carrying, or would they just not even register?
I don't know. Sometimes, and this is it is a perishable skill. The everything that I think of when I think of like survival, or I don't know, survival is it feels like an extreme word, but like self-preservation skills, like looking for the exits, looking at windows, looking at people when they walk in the restaurant. Maybe some people might call that paranoid. I just think it's kind of a good habit. The people when you're in that mode, I feel like you're looking for it. Like when I was a cop, I was looking for it. Whenever I was talking to people, I was looking for bulges. I was looking because a lot of people do exactly what you talked about. It's a very, very common thing, is they'll constantly touch it to remind yourself that it's there, or maybe just move it because it's bumping, that it's
hidden.
Yeah. And making sure, like, you have this fear, like, did it fall out? Nope, still there.
Right. Just like with your wallet, I do the same thing with my wallet. Just every time I stand up, really, I just do a quick little pat, make sure I didn't leave it somewhere.
Yep, my wallet, my keys, because I'm like 80% good about putting my keys in the same place all the time. But today I didn't. We were going grocery shopping, and I wanted to hurry up and get grocery shopping because I wanted to get back and get on the pod. And so I was the one rushing Ashley to get. I was like, "Come on, we gotta go!" And we were taking my truck. I misplaced my keys, and so when we went out there, I patted my pockets and I didn't have my keys. I'm like, "Oh, you must have my keys." She was like, "Nope, I sure don't." And so we went inside to where it normally is, and it wasn't there. And anyway, so when you're not in that zone of like, when you're not as, I don't know what the term would be, but when you're not looking for threats all the time, I feel like it's a lot less common to be looking for bulges or imprints.
Yeah, I feel like probably 95% of society probably A, wouldn't know what they were looking at.
Yeah.
But B, it's kind of like if you see somebody outside of, like, you normally see them in this scenario, and now you see them in this scenario, and you just don't even recognize it.
Yeah.
I'll bet it would be similar. So first off, 95% of people wouldn't recognize the bulge, but even the 5% that would, if they're not looking for a threat, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in a, I don't know, a bar, some kind of scenario where you're like, oh, I should be aware of my surroundings, then maybe that 5% would be more inclined to notice it. But if you're just going into the store or whatever, running errands, probably even experienced cops or whoever just don't pay attention.
Well, man, I tell you, one time when I was a cop, me and Ashley went grocery shopping at a Dillon's, at a Westside Dillon's, and when we were checking out, and this is the time I would say that I was, fairly vigilant about looking for stuff like that. When we were checking out, there was a guy behind us who was like less than an elbow's bump away from me, just because the line was tight together. I was looking around, I looked down, and I just happened to see the bottom of his holster of his he had a Glock, and I just happened to recognize the bottom of it, like the slide and the barrel were poking out just like that out of the bottom of his shirt. And I just realized, like, dang, someone got that close to me without me even noticing. But that didn't bother me, because I love that people have guns.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I got a little bit distance from him, I wasn't just automatically staring at his waist, but he was loading up his groceries, and I saw his whole thing, and he had some custom stippling on the side on his grip. Yeah. It was like some patriotic stuff. And I said, hey man, that's cool stippling you got on your Glock there. He was like, oh, thanks. I just got it done. I went to this shop, and we got in a cool conversation about guns.
Yep. It seems to me that if I see somebody that's got first off, I recognize that it's a Glock, and it's in a reliable, reasonable, well-made holster.
Yeah.
Just honestly, it's probably just like when I was a cop. Like, I'm more comfortable about that. Like, I'm not really worried that the dude that has his gun in a holster and he's carrying it in a place where he can reach it and all that kind of stuff. I'm more worried about the dude that's got it just hanging in his pants or in his pocket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because those are the guys that are likely going to be committing a crime with it.
Well, I mean, it gives me anxiety, because I felt like I've had to, probably, like, in reality, I didn't have to, but I've been in situations where I felt like I'd had to put a gun, like, in my waist hastily. Like, let's say an example would be at night, whatever, and someone knocks on the door, and I'm not expecting anyone. I might take my gun and put it in the back of my waist. Yeah, just an example, something like that.
When you're at the trap house.
Yeah, when I'm at the trap house and I got to go pick something up, you can tell it's less secure. Like, I'm nervous about it when it's like that. I'm like, oh man, this could fall out. Yeah. And I've seen pictures of people. I don't remember actually seeing people with those, but I've seen pictures of people in public with the gun, like, in the waist and like sweatpants, like, my brother in Christ. That is not.
You've got the right idea, the wrong execution, brother.
Yeah, I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
Don't like where that high point is right now.
Exactly. So speaking of where your head's at, bro, tell me about your recent trip.
What recent trip?
Into the wall.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've talked, so we got some ground to cover.
That's right.
And I noticed that you're trying to catch up with me on health issues, or I'm not sure what, but lay it on me.
I don't know. Like, I believe in the idea and even practicality of, like, a mind-body relationship. Like, I believe your body tries to tell you stuff. Like, stress can come out as like back pain or ulcers, things like that. So having said that, I have no idea how to treat my body, and I'm pretty sure it hates me. Let me apologize if I made fun of you for passing out at the froyo a couple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Accepted.
Okay. I found myself in a peculiar situation where I needed to sweat out a lot of water between a Friday and a Monday. Okay.
Making weight. You got
Yeah.
a wrestling.
I
match.
had a wrestling match coming up, and I needed to lose a lot of water. But I will say, I was also hydrating a lot at the same time. Like I thought I was doing this in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I
I mean, it sounds healthy to me.
yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with it.
I was losing copious amounts of water, and I'll get to that in a minute on how I was doing that. But I was losing copious amounts of water every day. But I was drinking, you know what I'm talking about when I say an Nalgene bottle, a 32 ounce. I was drinking about 3 to 5 of those a day, around there. 3 to 5 of those Nalgene. And so those 32 ounces, so that's 2 pounds of water in an Nalgene bottle. It's 2 pounds of water. So I was drinking 6 to 10 pounds of water a day. Not peeing as much as I feel like I should have been. I feel like I should have been using the bathroom a lot. It just wasn't happening. Get to Monday. I don't know, I'm still waiting on the judge's report card, but I don't know if I quite, got everything done, but either way it's done. Like I the timeline had ran out. I weighed in. I was good. I was eating normal again. I knew that I was going to take some days off from running. I ran 5 miles a day, which isn't a lot. That's not a terrible amount. I ran 5 miles a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. But I was wearing sweatpants and an undershirt and a hoodie on when I was running, and I was running on the incline. I put my treadmill on an incline when I was doing it. And 2 of those days I put on my my plate carrier, my heavy vest, my plate carrier. And so I was doing the high school wrestling team moves. I was losing a ton of weight. The only thing I didn't do is go to a sauna.
Yeah.
But I was making, and I was soaking all of my clothes. Like it was.
Did you weigh yourself? Like, were you keeping track of how much you lost?
Yes, guesstimating, because I was also drinking, and I had an Nalgene bottle with me, and I was drinking as I was running.
Right.
But like guesstimating, like I was like, whatever, because I'd finish an Nalgene, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna take 2 pounds off of whatever I come in at, because that's what I would be if I hadn't drank this Nalgene, and a significant amount of weight in 3 days.
Okay, so Monday afternoon, you're like, okay, I'm done sweating.
I have a nice, Ashley made this bomb lasagna, homemade lasagna, and Allie gets real picky about meat. So it was just sauce and cheese and the flat pasta lasagna. And man, it was just really spectacular. Like everything tasted really good. Maybe also because my body was so starved.
Yeah.
It was like, this is.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Ate a lot of the lasagna, but I was hungry and I was good to go. I ate a lot of lasagna.
In this during this weekend, had you been eating too, or like
I was intentionally eating fatty foods,
like fast food?
No, fat.
Just fat.
Like
okay.
like what I think of as healthy fats, of like one of my go-tos is I'll take a piece of lunch meat and a piece of sliced cheddar and a little dollop of mayo, and then roll that sucker into a tortilla or not into an actual tortilla, but roll it into a roll and chomp on that bad boy.
Yeah.
Muy bien. I was eating fat foods like that, like
Okay.
actually exactly that a lot. Avocados, eggs, cheese.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was it. I was avoiding all, and even then, I really only ate at night. The only time I'm ever hungry is, you know, normally the only time I'm ever hungry is at night, like a couple
So
hours before bed.
so that's your food was basically normal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then what happened?
I was laying down. See. Okay, I didn't tell you this. I think I might have had been my head in a funky position because we have this French chair. I have no idea if
You're
that's
so
what it's really
fancy.
called. Yeah, it's like a long, not sofa, but it's like a long oval with a headrest at the end. Can you picture what I'm explaining?
Yes. Yeah,
And there's a
it's almost like a bench.
Yes, almost like a bench, but there's only one side, and that's where you would seem like your head goes.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's what Rose was laying on when Jack when Jack painted
yes,
her as one of his ladies.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
I'm tracking with you.
Okay, so we just call it the French chair. I have no idea if that's what it's really called. Um, I was laying on it, so my head was in a real funky position. I had a pillow on it, but I was just laying down flat on this, and I was watching a YouTube video on Kali, the Hindu goddess Kali, because I'm a nerd.
Because I mean, what else would you do on a Monday night?
Right.
Just typical
I'm
Monday
glad
night
that's
for
over.
Blackwood.
Glad that's over. Let me get back to my normal routine of
Right.
foreign deities.
Yeah. Can I just interject real quick that
Sure.
sometimes it cracks me up because I'll be just randomly Googling like ancient religions in certain part of the world, 1500s, and I'll be like deep, like through the Wikipedia, like link, and somehow I'm looking at who knows what god or goddess, whatever,
Mhm.
and one of my kids will look over, like, what are you reading?
Yeah.
Like, it's same kind of thing.
I think I actually feel bad because of how I feel like desensitized my children are, or how used to me that they are. And to where I feel like there's things, just goofy things that I do that I feel like uh most people would, or a lot of kids would be like, hey, what the fuck is up with your dad? Like, why is he walking
Don't
around?
worry about him.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my kids, yeah. Anyway, I was laying down on the French chair watching videos about Kali, and Allie asked me to help her with something. Or no, you know what it was? My Apple Watch said it was time to stand to close my rings.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was like, time to stand, time to stand. And I was like, yeah, it's probably good to get up, stretch your legs anyway. So I get up, stretch my back, take 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. At 4, I see a tunnel coming, and it surprises me, but I know what's going to happen. I'm like, you're about to black out. And I had just walked out. I was getting to the threshold of between my living room and my dining room, and there was a dining room chair right by me. And I remember reaching my hand out, and my hand was shaking. I remember reaching my hand out to the chair, and I remember thinking, you're not going to make that. And then I close my eyes. I blink. I feel like I just blink, and I'm on my side. My shoulder hurts. My elbow hurts. My left hand hurts. I'm on my side, and everyone, Ashley and Allie, are by me screaming bloody fucking murder. Like, Ashley's got the keys in her hand. She's like, we need to go to the hospital. Which, by the way, maybe makes me think that my wife loves me more than yours.
Oh, mine wanted me to go too.
Oh no, I was just kidding.
I just wasn't going to do it.
Yeah. I felt, besides like I had a little bit sore left side of my body, I felt embarrassed. I was like,
Yeah.
Clayton, you idiot.
Yeah. Quit being a bitch. Get
I
up.
was like, God, I was going over the checklist in my head. I'm like, I know I'm hydrating. I've been eating. Like, what could have caused this? And so I start to sit up, and when I sit up, my back starts itching, and then Allie starts screaming again. She's like, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" And I turn and I'm like, "What?" My whole back had gone through the drywall panel, and
Oh, yeah.
and like I said, right on that threshold, and it was an egg shape, but it was my back and ass that
Yeah.
had busted through the drywall. And I was thinking, God, like now, because of something, me being a wuss, or me being a little knucklehead, now I got to replace this sheet of drywall and tell my landlord about it.
So did you, like, what do you think? What was it? Was it just dehydration? Like, how long did you feel?
Oh, my body was exhausted. It was exhaustion.
Okay.
So I was running at a 10-inch incline every time, and so I wasn't, because I knew I wanted to run for an hour at a time, so I knew I wasn't going to be going super fast. I knew I was going to be going around 5.5 miles an hour the whole time, but my goal was to stay in zone 2 or 3, just to sweat as much as possible in that amount of time. And I was losing like 5-6 pounds of water weight a run.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's with my calculation of me adding 2 pounds with every Nalgene I drank.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
How have you been feeling since then?
Man, the next day might have been fine. Tuesday might have been fine. Wednesday, was it Wednesday? One of these days, I happened to be home during the day waiting on some stuff, and by myself, completely by myself in my house, just chilling, I find myself in the same French chair and with my head in the same funky position. Like I think I might have like pinched off some flow when I was laying in that weird position, some blood flow to my head. But I found myself right there again, and I recognized it when I got up. Like all of a sudden, I felt this need to get up, or maybe the doorbell rang or something. But I got up, and I started to get the again, and I was like, no. I immediately took a knee. I immediately took a knee and put my hand on the wall. I was like, just breathe through this. Okay, we're good. And I stood up, and it even when I stood up the second time, it started to do this, but it went away on its own.
Are you prone to passing out? Has this happened before?
Man, so besides one other time recently, it hadn't happened. The only other time I remember passing out was in Taekwondo there in Wichita. One of my buddies, Austin, threw a round kick and barely caught me on my chin, but I got weak in the knees, but I was waking up as I hit the ground. I don't even know if if the lights fully went off, but it definitely turned my legs off.
Yeah.
He just did a little round kick, and it wasn't even hard. It was just like the top of his foot got me in my. If you want to kick someone in the face, you want to shin. You want to plant a good shin on there, because unless you're wearing a boot or something that'll protect your foot, you're more likely to break your foot bones. If you plant the top of your foot into someone's face or even into their ribs, and they happen to get an elbow down in there, which is, instinctual. If they happen to plant an elbow, that happens a lot in Taekwondo sparring. Someone will check. I think checking is illegal, but that used to be my favorite thing in Taekwondo now. But like they'll check a round kick with their leg, like they just bring their shin up.
Yeah.
And that'll ruin your day.
Oh, dude, I'll bet.
If someone gets a good check, or if someone plants an elbow right on the top of your foot as it lands. Again,
Yeah.
that'll make you rethink throwing that kick again.
So how long ago was you said other than the recently?
Like a month ago, it had to be maybe a little bit over than a month ago, like maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. I was refinishing some furniture, and it was a gift. I was painting I got some furniture, some decent furniture, but secondhand furniture off of Facebook Marketplace. I brought it home, sanded it, stripped it, took all the glued on pieces on, all the screws out, and completely refinished this armoire and a dresser and painted them a gray, like this really light gray, satin gray, and the trim was done in gold with gold paint. But so it was like it was a princess set in my mind. It was like furniture for princess. It was this really light gray, like darker than eggshell, but almost like an eggshell gray, and gold trim, and it looked real pretty. I was doing that in my garage, this this furniture painting, and I was like in a caveman squat position for a long time, getting the insides of this armoire, like one of the bottom rows. And it was hot. This was in July, I want to say. It was hot. No one was home. It was in the middle of the day. And I stood up I had to go get something, or I needed to rinse up or, change colors on my brush or something. And I remember something to do with my brush, because I stood up, and as soon as my legs got straight, the circle was too close. Like, I didn't recognize the circle as it was closing until it was like, oh, you're going down, homie. And the only thing I tried to do is like just roll your body, land on a shoulder, like land on a shoulder versus your face. You don't want to face plant. And so I swung my left shoulder. I was able to do that, and on the concrete of my garage, and I don't know if you can picture this, I'm in my driveway, and my garage is right in front of me. So there's like a 2-inch lip from my driveway to the garage. I landed right on that where that separates. So like a nasty straight line on my left shoulder.
Yeah.
And same thing. I went all the way out on it, because I don't remember hitting the ground. I think I came to right after I hit the ground, because I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. I was like, oh shit, that could have been bad, dummy. Like, I don't know what I could have done different besides maybe been more aware. What I need to do, besides investigating a possible underlying health condition,
that's your last priority.
Yeah, last on the list. What I need to do is just start standing up slower. Be conscious of whenever I go from a flat or a seated position. Seated position isn't bad. It's whenever I feel like my thighs, like if this is my leg, when my thighs break 90, like when I go into a deep squat, it could happen. Or if I'm laying flat, it could happen. I need to be more conscious about getting up from those positions, because I've been blacking out lately and causing some physical damage and some property damage.
Initially I was thinking that maybe you should look into whether that French chair was like possessed or something. Because it might be giving you some bad mojo if it happens whenever you're laying on that French chair. But it sounds like maybe you actually do have a health concern that should be investigated.
Well, I mean, is it a concern, or is it just a thing? Because, I can mitigate, I can manage. Like, if I have this the rest of my life, can I function still? Yeah, I can function just fine.
Yeah. As long as you know what to expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe you start wearing a helmet.
Well, what if it was 100 years ago? I think about stuff like that, or like, I don't know, maybe you have to go back further, but like 200 or 300 years, and you get your leg broken, you're like, people will try to set it. Someone, hopefully the priest or the barber or the witch man will try to set your leg. But besides
Right.
that, it's really like, oh, good luck, homie. I hope
Yeah.
that works. If you,
Yeah.
if you got anything that requires surgery, I think you're fucked, right?
Basically. Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the same. That's this kind of the same position I take. Like when it happened to me, I'm like, like what are they gonna do? They're gonna run some tests and they're gonna tell you to drink water. They're gonna tell you to blah blah blah. Like,
Right. I
probably
mean,
not.
I looked it up, and that's why I think exhaustion, like physical exhaustion, makes sense. And I can accept that. It's not like a hard pill to swallow that maybe my body was physically exhausted. Okay. But like I know I was hydrating. I know I was eating my normal amount that, and I don't run every day, but I run fairly often, and 5 miles is not an extremely, or 1 hour is my normal run time. Like I'm not pushing myself beyond my limits. I didn't feel like.
Yeah.
I don't normally run with the elevation maxed out, and I certainly don't normally run in sweats. But I'll do a kit run every once in a while. I'll throw my vest on. It's not my normal thing, but I've done it before.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like I didn't do anything crazy. So if I went to a doctor, I'd be probably coming out of pocket for a copay for a doctor's visit, which I don't want to do.
Mhm.
B, he's gonna tell me his best guess. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, he's just guessing.
Which is probably going to be very similar to what you're going to find on Google.
Right. And
You know.
and also he doesn't know my body like I do. And I don't feel like there's any I don't feel like there's any reason to believe it's anything other than exhaustion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like could it be the worst thing? Could I be possessed with an exhaustion devil or with a fainting devil? I mean, you could
Probably.
say.
Yeah.
is,
Now,
is that likely? I don't know.
now that kind of brings up an interesting thing that I was talking about with a friend last night that I thought about running it by you. I had so I finally kind of broke down, not broke down. I finally agreed to um, go to a counselor to try to work through some anxiety and all this kind of stuff. And
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And at the very beginning, she said, "Hey, do you mind if I have AI listen to help me with notes?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." Well, then I got to thinking about it last night, and I was talking to my wife, and she had mentioned that our regular doctor recently did the same thing. So, hey, I've got this AI program that if you're good with it, it'll listen, it'll help me with notes. And I was like, well, wait a second. If it's just listening to help with notes, that's called a recorder.
Right.
Like, what does AI have to do with helping you with notes? And I was talking to a friend that's a therapist, and he was saying that he's heard of this technology. To his knowledge, he didn't know that people were using it yet. In his mind, it literally is just used for notes and to like recap stuff and maybe categorize stuff. But then I was thinking, and I don't know that this is a bad thing. Like it may be a good thing. But is this program listening to me, like my voice inflection and my words, and telling the therapist, hey, have you considered this? Or have you considered that? Like, you know what I'm
If
saying?
if
Like,
not yet, it definitely will in the future.
and is that necessarily a bad thing, or do you
Yeah.
think that would be a good thing? Because
It's
here's the concern, or one of the concerns is so think about with medical doctors, therapists, with all kinds of you know medical situations. You've got, if you take the human element out of it, you could have machines telling the doctors how to treat us, or therapists on like how, you know what I'm saying? Like you could change the way people think very easily
oh yeah.
through that
Especially
avenue.
especially I mean, and they talked about this. There's novels written, a very famous novel, Manchurian Candidate, that was essentially based on, they found out real CIA programs of this type of research and these type of programs like Operation Treadstone and, you know, Oliver North. You can Google that on your own, but it is actually documented that the CIA was looking into thought implanting and mind, I wouldn't say mind controlling, but mind programming.
Mhm.
And like, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a document, it's a CIA program, a documented CIA program. And they got busted. And this is a question, if you think about just human nature. They got busted, and they've been busted with their hands doing, they've been busted doing some naughty things historically, the CIA. And it's very likely, I would say probable, that I think we all know they've done some other naughty things that they haven't officially fessed up to.
Yeah.
So if they get caught doing this they've got caught doing this in the past, do you think they stopped? Or do you think it's almost like law enforcement whenever this case law comes out that says, hey, you have to turn around and act like you're going to let them leave before you ask them for consent? They just find another
Yeah.
loop around and keep doing the same exact thing.
Right.
I think that's likely. I've seen similar behavior with in other professions, and it was justified in the agent's mind, the person working on behalf of the agency.
Have you ever heard the theory that, do you know The Winds of Change by Scorpions?
No, but can you sing it for me?
I can't whistle very well. There's lots of whistling. Yeah, I can't do it. You don't know that song?
Are you hearing me? Is my mic picking it up?
No,
Oh,
it's
man.
not.
I think the song that I'm thinking of is Guns N' Roses, though. Don't they have a whistling song?
Yeah.
Hey, woman, take it slow.
Yeah.
It's not that?
It's not that.
Oh, okay. Well, then no, I don't know
That's
what you're talking.
something. You're gonna have to listen to this song because it's a classic, absolute classic. The theory is that the CIA wrote that song because it came out shortly before the Berlin Wall came down.
And what's the name of the song again?
Winds of Change.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There's a podcast on it. It's like maybe an 8-part podcast. Fascinating. But yeah, apparently there's at least a school of thought that the CIA does things like that. Like they will write songs or they will influence culture to accomplish goals.
So I know of a way, in a pretty documented way, it's actually 100% documented way, that the CIA, by engaging in cultural influence, has produced, not directly, but indirectly produced, two of my favorite things on earth. And I feel bad because they were doing it in a naughty way. Like, they were trying to, like, it's one of the things that they got caught doing and said, oh, we'll never do that again. Is they back before LSD was illegal, and really kind of back before anyone knew what LSD was, the CIA, and you can look this up, it's on they talk about this a little bit on the documentary of the band The Grateful Dead. But in a part of San Francisco called Haight-Ashbury, the CIA was giving out doses of LSD to basically anyone who wanted them. They had these labs, or these stores called LSD labs, and you would walk in if you're a young hippie in Haight-Ashbury and just get loaded up with LSD, like sheets of LSD, and take it out to your friends. They just wanted you to report back on what it did.
When was this?
In the 60s. So Ram Dass comes from that era and comes from specifically that scene. And I don't think he talked about those labs, but he talked about coming from or being in the Haight-Ashbury scene. And the band The Grateful Dead, and we're not even gonna mention we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now, but I like some Grateful Dead. And they came together in kind of a pretty odd way, and they came together around these LSD labs in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, which was being controlled by, it was a CIA program. It was a CIA. They wanted to use it as a truth serum, and they were testing it on people. Like I said, you can easily Google this and find all the .gov and in whatever sources.
So at that point, was it illegal?
No, it wasn't illegal. They
Okay.
were trying to understand it. So in a lot of really tangible ways, like I said, not directly but indirectly, the CIA is definitely responsible for the Grateful Dead. And they definitely influenced Ram Dass and kind of helped get him down this journey.
Yeah. So do you think, what do you think of
I don't think
it?
they knew they were doing that. I don't think they had any idea they were creating the Grateful Dead. I think there are theories that I don't know enough about, but there are theories that they had their hands in other bands directly, maybe under the guise, like through record agencies or through
Yeah.
things like that. The band wasn't maybe necessarily complicit on it, but they were doing stuff for the CIA.
Yeah. If you listen to that podcast, they'll talk about the fact that, Scorpions all, of course, deny that the CIA had anything to do with it, and um, all of that. But I would bet that they probably, through different methods, through different ways, I'll bet that there's probably a lot of influence on culture from groups like that.
Well, and just think about this, like follow the trail logically in your mind. And I can't cite any sources on this right now, but just think about if this logically makes sense. They've been around, they came out of the OSS like back in World War II. The Operation of Special Services was disbanded after World War II, and then it was all those people basically one day took off the OSS hat and put on the CIA hat. They turned that into the CIA. Um, they've had since then almost 100 years, but think about all the since then they were bringing in Nazis, allegedly chasing them down. But look up Operation Paperclip and the founders of NASA and the founders, like a lot of the founders of the early intelligence services, were Nazi officers, and they were brought over on to help the war effort and to help the United States. That's very documented. Russia took a bunch of scientists and government officials, and the U.S. did the same thing. And instead of them being held accountable, they became U.S. citizens, and the U.S. protected them. So they learned from all these geniuses. They've had all this time, decades of a Cold War with Russia, a couple hot wars, um, definitely Vietnam, but probably a lot of Korea was influenced by early CIA. Vietnam was 100% influenced by CIA. Vietnam, we now know, was based off of an attack on the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a false flag operation. That's public information now. It was a false flag operation to coax the United States into the war. The government wanted to go to war. They were trying to bring JFK into the war with Vietnam, and he kept telling his generals, no, no, no. Like he agreed to send over some advisors, kind of like we've done with Ukraine, which that can get slippery. But it was never a full-fledged invasion until after he was killed, which that's weird that the intelligence agency wanted the Vietnam War to go.
Is it not a little bit sickening to consider that there are people that financially benefit from the country going to war,
From
and
death.
and that there are people that literally, like, lots of people and lots of businesses that are basically, they get filthy rich when they can cause a war.
So I think war is the worst one, but there's a few other baddies. But war is definitely the worst one. Like, man, think about a CEO's obligations, like on black and white, like what you'd be able to defend in court. As a CEO, I'm in charge of XYZ weapons company, and we build weapons for the United States military. And although we had nothing to do with the global war on terror. We made a lot of money on the global war on terror, and our stakeholders made a lot of money. And guess what? They have developed their lifestyle based on this last 20 years of making a lot of money every single year. So now I am beholden to keep my position as the CEO.
Mhm.
What's in best interest for my stakeholders is to keep making them a lot of money. And so what do
And
you mean?
what's in your best interest for you is like, because you as the CEO of that company, you've also adopted a lifestyle that you want to keep.
Absolutely. And we talked about it last time, but it's no secret. There's a lot of military and industrial lobbyists and relationships with elected officials. Like Dick Cheney was the CEO of Kellogg Brown and Root, which won a no bid contract to rebuild Iraq. That's 100% open source information. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
um, so if I'm the CEO and I have this opportunity, isn't my obligation toward my shareholders and toward the board and toward the company? I mean, I got all these employees, they got kids that they need insurance, and there's a bunch of innocent, really not even quotations, I did the finger quotations, I'll take it back, but even real innocent victims of if this machine slows down.
Yeah.
I got maintenance men, I got production people, I got a whole shipping industry. I'm supporting the war on terror. And so now that these two wars are done, is it theoretically possible that they would use their influence, like if there's a possibility of another conflict, or let's say one of your partners, one of our partner countries is going to war, and it's 100% legit war, you're able
Sure.
to justify it as 100% legit war, and I have this relationship with this politician. I mean, is it that far of an idea for me to go, hey, we we sure could make a lot of money if that country did go to war, and especially if we got first bid on the price of this war. You need some new Hellfire missiles, you need some new Abrams tanks, you need
Yeah.
another aircraft carrier. And tell you what, although we're not going to make any official donation to you directly, we'll make a pretty handsome donation to your campaign. And whenever you get out, there could be a spot on our board, which comes with a salary
Mhm.
if you're willing to play ball. Is that outside of the
I
realm of possibility?
I feel like that happens all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
I think it happens all the time, not only with, in this scenario, but I think it happens um, with pharmaceuticals. I think it happens I mean, all across the board.
When
Um,
uh when marijuana was first starting to get legalized, recreational marijuana was first starting to get legalized in California. I remember listening to Joe Rogan talk about this while it was happening back 10 years ago or more. When recreational weed first started getting legalized in California, the biggest proponent against it was the Correctional Officers Union of the prisons of California. All the correctional officers had a union, and they formed like a pack that was trying to influence these politicians because they were going to lose jobs.
yeah,
If people stopped coming in on drug charges, you wouldn't need as many correctional officers. And these guys have families, and these guys need to pay their insurance. They need to pay their truck bill, and they need to pay water.
yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna mention earlier, that the war on terror and the war on drugs, I think you can make some strong
There's a
connections.
lot of parallels.
And we had talked
No
about
one
it.
wants it to end.
Nobody can afford it to end,
Right.
because just think about all of the all of the um, agencies between here and the border
Yeah.
along the entire southwest of the United States. How much money do they seize? Well, let's just, because maybe one agency, whatever, law enforcement in general,
Mm-hmm.
we seize hundreds of millions of dollars in cash every year.
Yeah.
Think about if that dried up. So if we won the war, whatever, there's no longer a market for drugs, whatever, however the scenario is, to where now we take that out of the hands of these agencies.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that they can no longer afford that they need to do the other part of law enforcement. You know, they need these Bearcats, or they need these rifle slings, or they need the optics, or whatever good thing you want. Well, what do we have in the seizure fund?
Yeah. Man, I don't know if you remember, but there was a little version of that happened when me and you were both cops. Do you remember when HSI merged with ICE? I knew, I don't know about going into the weeds on that, but I know agents on both sides of that, and they were kind of uneasy about that merger. And I think they're still pretty uneasy about that. We're like, there's some animosity, like, yeah, he's HSI, but he's an ICE guy. And then the ICE guys are like, fucking HSI thinks they're blah, 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 blah. And I think I don't know how this actually shook out, but I think what had happened is they wanted to get rid of ICE, or basically just let HSI do ICE's job. But there was thousands of ICE agents, and they're like, hey, we have all these GSs that we need to put somewhere, and a lot of them are tenured where we can't just let them go. I'm like, well, bring them into HSI. I think that's I've heard that's kind of the water cooler version of how that went down.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that probably, you know, with less of a focus on the task that ICE typically does.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
What else are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
But, and I haven't followed it for a long time. But there for a while, asset forfeiture was a big deal. And a lot of, like, locally, a lot of agencies weren't season stuff anymore.
From direction of the state.
Yeah, which that whole thing, that was just bullshit. Like, there was so much propaganda about, like, what we were seizing and how we were seizing it and all that. And in hindsight,
I wonder about how much of this applies to other issues, because it's real easy to criticize parts of the government or like case law stuff that I don't like. But I wonder how much of this that I kind of oversee on some of the stuff, the ones that I do. But like, it seems to me like there was a lot of political grandstanding that went into, like, it seemed like from the outside in, or kind of the inside, looking further inside, that decision, a lot of those case laws was these judges flexing their political ideologies onto the outcome.
Yeah, I think so. I think very, very much.
Yeah. And it seems like it should be the opposite. And I'd like to think that their goal is to make it the opposite, but like, it should be what the law is. You are the judge of, like, the defense argues, the prosecution argues, and you are the judge of, like, putting the pieces together, you know, outside of a jury, because then it's kind of on them. But even still, you're the judge of, like, what's right and wrong, and even telling the jury how they're supposed to interpret this evidence and these arguments. That's a sacred position, but man, judges have a lot of power.
Too much power.
It seems like, right?
Yeah, because then it becomes political, like what you see with happening with the president and
the Supreme Court,
with what happened during his whole administration, you know, of and it happens on both sides, but president makes an executive order, then federal judge strikes it down, and it's like, well, who's in charge here?
Yeah.
And I get checks and balances. I obviously support that, but it does seem like judges have way too much authority to arbitrarily say, well, this is how this is interpreted, so it doesn't fly. Somebody in Hawaii. Why do I give a shit what some judge in Hawaii that was appointed by Bill Clinton or whoever?
Right.
Like, well, you don't have who elected you?
Yeah. Or me in Georgia being affected by some federal case law in California, like that might as well be a different planet than the community that I'm in right now, or especially in Wichita. But that might as well be a different world. Like those people don't think like how we think. How come their laws affect the way we have to live
Yeah.
and the way we have to operate? It um it makes me nervous though, because I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, in full disclosure, I have friends that are judges, like kind of mentors or whatever, or people that are influential, older people that are have been influential in my life that are judges. So I respect them. Um, but I have this weird, like almost reverence in a weird way. Like maybe I need to think about this, but almost a weird reverence for the position of the court or the position of a justice. Um, but yeah, man, it seems like it's so easily it's so easy to express your own opinion in a verdict, because it seems like that's what happened with that latest with Trump's convictions. It seemed like that was a political weaponization of the judicial system against a political opponent, you know, which should be reprehensible. And even they've been, both sides have been saying is reprehensible, but it's happening in real time in front of us.
Yeah. Well, did you see that Facebook announced the other day, or Mark Zuckerberg announced that in fact, you might have sent me the video on it, that they had experienced pressure from the administration to shut things down or to downplay things, and
no one
cares.
No one cares. But I was thinking about that today. Like, I'm going to talk out of both sides a little bit, but I think I'm glad that Mark Zuckerberg wrote that letter. I'm glad that he said those things, because it exposes some stuff that I feel like Elon Musk said the same thing for Twitter. He said, we know for sure they were influencing these times. Well, Mark Zuckerberg just came out and said basically they were doing the exact same thing, but with Meta. Mm-hmm. I'm glad Mark Zuckerberg said that, but I think he's hedging his bets in case Trump gets elected. Yep. And he's obviously telling us what we already fucking know. And
yeah. He's not exposing himself to too much.
No. And he's doing it in this way where he's like, I'm not even concerned about myself to say this. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the truth. We were working with the federal.
Yeah. Thanks, motherfucker. About 3 years too late.
Yeah. And there are memes and videos I'm watching right now of these congressional hearings where they're asking Biden officials if they did this. And they're saying over and over again, no, we did not. No, we did not. And everyone's saying, hey, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
No one is being held accountable for that. None. It blows my mind to the point where, man, this is a weird thing that I don't know the answer to. I'm interested to know what you think. Sometimes you can think, like, go down these rabbit holes and think, well, what's even the point? What's the point of voting? Like, I felt like that a couple weeks ago, thinking about RFK before RFK joined forces with Trump, which we can talk about if you want. But I felt like that. I was like, I'm just going to vote for RFK, even though I'm in a swing state, a pretty important swing state. I was like, I'm just gonna, because I was disenchanted with this side and also disenchanted with that side. And I feel like it's corrupt anyway. I feel like my vote doesn't count at the end of the day, and they're going to put in whoever they want anyway. I think it's all a big collusion with the media and with all the industrial complexes, the military, the pharmaceutical, the healthcare, the trade, foreign interests. I think they're all bought and paid for. I explained on Citizens United. You can go down this rabbit hole and think, well, what's even the point? Or do you, like, I guess there's a degree of becoming active, just either deciding I'm going to vote anyway, or I'm even going to maybe get involved and volunteer, or What do you think?
Man, I've taken both sides,
Yeah.
and I do plan to vote this year. There hasn't been, I don't know that there's been a general election that I haven't voted in since I've been eligible. But I frequently, even if my person wins, I'm just kind of like,
We all know you're voting for Biden.
like at the end of the day, Kansas doesn't really. I think we have like 5 electoral votes or something like that. Like I don't feel like my vote counts.
Yeah.
My single vote does not matter.
Yeah.
Now somebody could say, well, if everybody said that, then well, yeah, but we're not talking about everybody. We're talking about me.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that my vote matters, and especially not in Kansas. So whether or not the electoral college needs to be revamped or whatever, I'm not smart enough to have an opinion on that.
Right.
But honestly, I'm not going to say that there was for sure theft or that that the election was fraudulent or whatever. But there's enough concern.
I don't think you're crazy for questioning it.
Yeah. And there's enough concern that makes me think, well, yeah. So not only
I would
does
like
my
someone
vote,
to reassure me about, I would like someone to lay out the evidence to show that I'm wrong for questioning it. I would like someone to lay it out and be like, no, this, and this. But so far, it just seems.
well, and some of that is certainly because of, the media that we've consumed, what we've been told. But a lot of that was just from my own observation.
Yeah.
Like that particular election, we had gone out to the East Coast, and like everywhere you go, there were people with like Trump flags. Like you saw all of the boat rallies, and like across the country there was so much enthusiasm. It doesn't make sense that with all of that enthusiasm that Biden was able to rally enough support to win the number of votes that he did. And it's possible that people were just silent about it. They just, his supporters didn't campaign. They whatever, that there were just a bunch of silent voters we didn't know about. But when you have that feeling going into it,
yeah,
and then what happened, it just doesn't add up. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to be like, well, I'm not buying it.
So my uneducated conspiracy theorist theory is, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong. But I think the machine is going to put Kamala Harris in. I think she's going to win the election. I think because the machine has decided that she's going to be the president. But I mean, another piece of evidence for what you're talking about is both sides, Trump and Biden in the last election, had record number voter turnout. Like more people than had ever voted Republican. And it just so happens that more people than had ever voted Democrat voted Democrat. And you're crazy to question it, even though just the one right before that they said was false. Like for 3 years into it, they were trying to press Russiagate. They're like, this is voter fraud, voter manipulation. He didn't really win. But you're crazy for questioning it that I'm not saying that Biden didn't win. I'm just saying it seems suspicious.
Yeah.
I would like someone to make it seem less suspicious.
Yeah.
So you're still going to vote?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know. Just probably out of habit, just probably out of a sense of duty.
Well, man, I think I said the last time we talked that I don't think endorsements carry as much weight as people think that they do. Like, I think just because I think just because RFK joined forces with Trump doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who was going to vote or who was supporting RFK is now supporting Trump.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Since Tulsi Gabbard came out and endorsed Trump, I think that made a lot of people say, "Oh, this is serious."
Now, I agree. Is he offering them positions in his cabinet, or are they just they're just supporting him?
So, I don't know about Tulsi Gabbard. I hadn't heard about her. I haven't heard the details about her, but I know with RFK and both RFK and Trump, I heard mention this on podcasts. One with when Trump was on Tucker Carlson, and one with RFK was on Tucker Carlson. RFK was on Tucker Carlson, and Trump might have been on Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
But they both said that he's going to be part of the transition team, which means he's going to be picking people, key people as in the government. Like RFK is going to be helping Trump pick people to put into these positions. And he's going to be going off of his main concern, which was healthcare, specifically healthcare for the children, but healthcare in general. Yep. That's where RFK's focus is going to be. And I heard both of them say that there's also room for other cooperation between them.
Yeah. What would Tulsi's focus be?
I don't know, but man, I think this stuff is transparent, but maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist, or maybe I'm finding patterns where they aren't. I'm willing to give that benefit of a doubt, but I think it's so transparent. They put the Biden-Harris administration and in the Department of Justice put Tulsi Gabbard on a terrorist watch list.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no evidence or reason cited, like no reasonable suspicion cited, just she's on there. And the only thing she had been doing publicly, like maybe she's making these back deals with Iran that I don't know about, but the only thing she's been publicly doing is criticizing Kamala Harris and Biden. Mm-hmm. And like things that have happened in Hawaii.
Yeah, because that's where
she's from.
She's from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was a senator there. She's also, I believe, a lieutenant, or maybe she made lieutenant commander in the Army National Guard. She'd been deployed to Iraq multiple times. She's seen combat. The reason she has that white streak in her hair is caused from stress on her first or second deployment from just working on bodies 24 hours around the clock.
Yeah. I've heard a couple interviews by her, and she seems super squared away. Honestly,
lifelong Democrat.
If she had run for president, I probably would have voted for her in the last election. But yeah, he could. I think if he used this momentum,
yes,
to really drill down on the RFK supporters and on the Tulsi supporters, and even if he can find some more people that are, I would consider both of them maybe not middle of the road, but like not extremists. They're like reasonable people.
They both call them, they're definitely centrist, and I think they're both level-headed. I think RFK is a very smart man. I think Tulsi is too. She's not a smart man, but she's very smart.
She's a smart woman.
She's a smart lady. But they would both call themselves classical liberals. RFK's vice presidential pick, the lady that was running with him as vice president, she would call herself a progressive. She has called herself a progressive liberal. Like she was even progressive, and she partnered with RFK. She said that RFK is a progressive too. I don't know if he's like, at least not what comes to my mind when I think of progressives, but he is a classical liberal.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of goes to show just how far things have kind of swung, probably in both directions, but to where a classic liberal is now considered a right-wing extremist.
I don't want to
watch list,
I don't want to out him, but there is someone that that I've known for years that I think watches this podcast, but we talk very often. And he is a classic liberal, like maybe even kind of progressive. And that's all I'm going to say about him. But he's a progressive. He lives in, I'll say this. He lives very close to Aurora, Colorado, like in Denver, basically Aurora. That apartment complex that recently gotten taken over by
Oh,
MS-13 in Aurora.
I heard something about that, but don't know any details.
MS-13 has taken over an apartment complex, like a Section 8 ghetto apartment complex in Aurora. And like that's their gang headquarters now. There's mothers walking around, or not, there's hombres walking around holding AKs and AR-15s and wearing bandanas and shit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Aurora, Colorado.
Okay.
And it was it from so this person that I know is a classic liberal, like I said, even progressive liberal, and he is like, we got to close the border, we got to get these people out of here, we got to tighten up, this crime is out of control, we need to fund the police.
Yeah.
He's sounding real red real quick.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's versions of this, and I think I honestly consider versions of this whenever they appear, but there's versions of this from the left too. Like, I think it's real easy to bash, like I talked about before, universal health care or universal basic income when you've spent decades and indoctrinated into the conservative mindset where that makes no sense. Nope, it's communist. Nope, it's Marxist, and won't even give it an honest dialogue. Like, won't even give it an honest intellectual conversation. Like, well, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I think it's worth considering. At least really dissecting and taking your red or blue hat off and just looking at the point. Like what happened with when my buddy was confronted with this Venezuelan gang that came over and took over an apartment complex 7 miles from his house. When it affects you, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Than when it's just a political grandstand.
So, man, I'm running out of time real quick. Probably
That's
not
fine.
enough time to ask this, but I was thinking about this the other day that we've talked before, maybe not you and I, maybe not on the podcast, but people talk about how our system just isn't going to work with the two-party system,
Right.
because they're just broke. I wonder when you start getting people like RFK or anybody that considers themselves a classic Democrat or whatever, when they now become conservative, is that not kind of just resetting the system? So to where Democrat doesn't mean Democrat, Republican doesn't mean Republican. At some point, it seems like that's what it would get to. If you've got Tulsi and RFK and whoever, and likewise on the other side, you've got Republicans that I wonder if it gets to a point where the names mean something different.
Absolutely. It does, because we've seen it. So like, think about Bush Republicans, but I'm talking about like September 12th, 2001, like those Republicans, the ones that were in a hurry to go to war, the ones that were in a hurry to pass the Patriot Act, the one, those war hawk, Dick Cheney Republicans. Those Republicans are not Trump Republicans.
Right.
Those Republicans are not the Make America Great. They're definitely not libertarians. Those Republicans are like the 200 Republicans that recently signed a thing saying that they're never Trumpers and are backing Kamala Harris. Did you see that?
No.
Where there is this thing. It's like Mitch Romney, Leon Panetta, or not Leon Panetta, I don't know, like a bunch of these classic Dick Cheney type Republicans, the Bush Republicans.
Yeah.
There's like 200 of them that have signed this document saying that we cannot in good conscience support Trump. When I saw that, I was like, good. you're the people that we don't like, the people that tricked us into 9/11, the people that passed Citizens United. Like, we know you're the same. A Bush and an Obama is basically interchangeable, and a Clinton is basically interchangeable, which by default a Biden is, but they're the same.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
The only ones that's different are these crazy outsiders. Man, Bernie Sanders had an interview with Theo Vaughn recently that I think is worth a listen. And the Bernie Sanders interviews with Joe Rogan, I think, are worth listening to. I dismissed him in the past because he even self-identified as like a democratic socialist. And anything socialist was just not on my radar. Like, nope, you're a kook, commie, don't want to hear anything you got to say.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to his interviews with an open mind, there's some good ideas. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know how they flesh out, but he makes a lot of sense, and he cites a lot of sources, a lot of current sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never listened to him with an open mind.
Start off with Theo because, Theo's funny and makes it light, and like you don't have to marry these ideas. But then go back and listen to the old stuff that with Joe Rogan. He's a smart fella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give it a listen.
So we got about 3 minutes left before I gotta bounce out of here. Anything that you're wanting to cover that we haven't talked about?
Oh no, man. I think that was great just flowing like that. That's my ideal convo on here, is just no agenda, but having some. I don't like to go and a lot.
Yeah. You wanted something a couple things that I've noticed that maybe we keep this, maybe we don't. I never noticed how often I tell the same story. Have you noticed that?
No.
I feel like there's a couple times where I'm like, wait a second, I've already talked about that, or I've already told that story.
Here's what's tricky is, that's okay, because every week there's going to be new people listening.
Okay.
Every single week. And, you forget about stories. That's how friends really talk. I tell you the same story. Mo caught me the other time because sometimes I'll change a little detail here or there, depending on how I want to swing the story. Mo, my friend that I've introduced you to, Mo, caught me. I was telling a story about, I'm not going to get into it on here, but one time I had to go hands-on with a drunk person that was in custody. I told her that story one way when he came to visit with me, and then months later, I told the story a different way, like, which neither one of them were false, but it was like I was leaning on one part of the story more than this time.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, that must have happened to you a lot because you told me the same story a couple months ago. I'm like, oh shit, he busted me. So it's okay. That's how friends do. Friends tell the same story. But B, yeah, I guess that's part of the same thing, is that there's going to be new people listening. So there's always going to be new people listening, and that's what friends do. Friends tell the same story at different times. So
well, then cool. I'm just going to keep saying the same things over and over.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
I don't know. It was the other day. I was I've here recently been listening to several of our older conversations.
Yeah.
And I just noticed one, I emphasize words in weird places, like just the way I talk, and I say the same things over and over. So yeah, it'll be like a little treasure hunt. You can start as I talk, you can be like, has he said this before? Is this the same thing he said last time?
I am consciously trying to listen because I know I jaw jack a lot. I mean, I ramble a lot. I feel like I do. So I'm actively trying to listen whenever you talk and not think of what I'm going to say next. I don't want to say, okay, I don't want to feel like I'm going, all right, when is he done? So I can say this thing.
Yeah.
I want to stop and like, what is he talking about? How is that interesting? Well, how does that relate to this thing? I'm consciously trying to do that instead of thinking about what am I going to say next?
Yeah. I'm trying to do that in face-to-face conversations too, because I just realize how often it's not because you're not interested, and it's not because I don't want to listen. Honestly, a lot of times it's because I'm afraid I'm going to forget. And so I think we all tend to do that, where we see an opening and we're like, I gotta say it.
Yeah, whatever I feel like I have to say is so important that when can I say it now? Yeah.
Yep.
And he could have said like, "Hey, my mom has cancer." You know, like, I bought a new dog. Wait, what?
Oh.
That's not funny. I'm sorry. I hope nobody gets cancer ever. I hope everybody finds a cure.
All right. Well, I got to get out of here. But
That sounds good, brother.
Catch you later on.
Bye.
Peace.